Detective Recap here. Today, I'm going to explain a drama romance film called The Virgin Suicides, which is a masterclass in dehumanizing young girls. After all, the two ways to dehumanize someone are by dismissing them and by idolizing them. This movie shows the extreme ends of the spectrum through a group of teenage sisters who killed themselves one by one. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. A man once asked, "Should I kill myself or have a cup of coffee?" Some believe that the question of whether or not life is worth living is the most fundamental query there is. But even after millennia of human existence, we still don't have a universal answer to this question. And just like us, a certain ragtag of boys turned men will never reach the truth. In the 1970s, a group of young boys from the suburbs of Grosse Pointe, Michigan, obsesses over the 5 beautiful Lisbon sisters. After 25 years, the now grown men recall the story of how the teenage sisters ended their lives, still trying to figure out why they did it. 13-year-old Cecilia first tries killing herself by slitting her wrists in a bathtub. Fortunately, she is quickly found and rushed to the hospital, so she manages to survive. Upon her recovery, the doctor says that she's not even old enough to know how bad life gets. In turn, Cecilia tells him that he's obviously never been a 13-year-old girl. Cecilia and her other sisters, 14-year-old Lux, 15-year-old Bonnie, 16-year-old Mary, and 17-year-old Therese, continue to obey their strict Catholic parents. Their mother, Sarah, is a devout housewife while their father, Ronald, is a math teacher. Everyone has an opinion about why Cecilia attempted to end her life, but the child's motive remains unclear. People blame her parents, the new kid on the block, and even the interior design of their home. During her counseling, Cecilia's doctor concludes that the little girl didn't actually want to take her life, but her act was a call for help. Knowing the girl's parents are strict, the doctor suggests letting Cecilia interact with boys her age. Everyone's looking everywhere for an answer to Cecilia's problem, but nobody ever tries to look at Cecilia herself. When you're a child, nobody takes you seriously. People, adults, especially, prefer projecting their own views and insecurities onto children without taking a step back to understand them. And when it comes to young girls, everyone is all the more dismissive of them. Cecilia's already hinted at her personal plights, yet her doctor just runs some ink blots by her and assumes that what she needs is a boy. It's almost as if Cecilia can't be a girl with her own thoughts and her own humanity. One day, Mr. Lisbon invites one of his students, Peter, to his house, as a token of gratitude for helping him set up a solar system model in class. While eating, Lux discreetly flirts with the boy by playfully touching his leg with her feet. Once dinner is over, Mrs. Lisbon lets Peter use the bathroom in Cecilia's room. There, Peter goes through the girl's stuff, imagining Lux as he smells a lipstick. Suddenly, Lux knocks on the door, so Peter lets her in and watches her as she looks for something. Noticing Peter standing and staring, she teasingly asks him to leave the bathroom. After that incident, Lux has grown more brazen with alluring the boys and men in the neighborhood. These boys are likely more than just boys to Lux. They're new experiences, a wholly different world outside of the small one her parents keep her in. And to see them so acutely enthralled by her feminine existence, which her parents try hard to diminish, must be thrilling for her. 2 weeks after Cecilia returns home, Mr. Lisbon persuades his wife to throw a party for their girls. Tim and his friends are all invited to the party, and the girls seem amused by the boys' awkward and juvenile charm and humor. But Cecilia doesn't seem to be having fun and excuses herself from the party. It isn't long before everyone hears Mr. Lisbon scream, and when they all check to see what happened, they realize that Cecilia has jumped off the window and impaled herself on the iron fence. Meanwhile, the neighbors continue to gossip about the Lisbons as the family gets their iron fence removed. Tim and his friends come into possession of Cecilia's diary after the plumber's assistant found it in the bathroom. The boys try to analyze every page of the notebook in search of anything that will help them understand why Cecilia did what she did. Based on her handwriting, one of them concludes that she's a dreamer who must have thought that she would fly when she jumped. In one of the entries, the boys read that Lux once wrote the garbage man's name all over her underwear. When Mrs. Lisbon found out about it, she bleached out her daughter's undergarments and left Lux crying in bed all day. After reading Cecilia's diary, the boys get a glimpse into the lives of the Lisbon sisters and realize the imprisonment of girlhood. They adopt a dreamy view of girls, and they believe that girls are just women in disguise. They even conclude that these girls understood life, death, and even them, but they, as boys, would never fathom these little women. It's clearer now that these boys have stripped the sisters of their humanity. To them, girls like the Lisbon sisters are otherworldly creatures that they will never understand, so they don't even try. But in the end, most of what they've read from Cecilia's diary entries are painfully mundane. There's no mention of her sadness, of feeling distant from her parents. It's almost as if Cecilia is closer to being a faceted human being than she is the mysterious, ephemeral angel the boys picture her as. After some time, a reporter named Lydia Pearl goes to the Lisbon residence and asks Mary and Bonnie about Cecilia, hoping to write a piece about the girl. As she interviews the girls, Mrs. Lisbon shows up and quickly tells her to leave. However, Lydia proceeds to give a sensationalized report about Cecilia. Lydia talks about what some psychologists think of kids' behaviors, saying their frustration can sometimes lead to acts of violence. This leaves the neighbors wondering why they couldn't just let the poor girl rest in peace. That night, Mr. Lisbon hallucinates and sees Cecilia in her bedroom, looking towards her open window. As he closes it, Mr. Lisbon is startled when Bonnie calls him. She tells him not to worry since the iron fence has already been taken out. Meanwhile, Tim dreams about Cecilia sitting on his bed and watching him sleep, while his other friend, Chase, sees Cecilia on a tree. The Lisbon girls go back to school as if nothing happened, and Mr. Lisbon does the same. Due to the recent event in the neighborhood, the local school has decided to hand out green pamphlets to the students, discussing the sensitive issue of taking one's life. At this point, Cecilia is nothing more than a ghost and an idea for everyone to mourn and yearn for. But most of all, she's an object for everyone around her to commodify. From that pushy reporter, to her school, to the boys who invade her privacy by picking at her diary, Cecilia's just a PSA, a hot topic, and an enigma. As the siblings move on with their lives, more boys are starting to flock around Lux and claim to know her and have slept with her. However, the only reliable boy who has really gotten to know Lux is Trip Fontaine, the school heartthrob. Trip's infatuation with Lux began when he accidentally entered her class after hiding from one of his teachers. Since every girl in school has a crush on Trip, he is intrigued as to why Lux doesn't find him interesting. 25 years later, Trip Fontaine talks about the day he first saw Lux, saying he never got over her. It doesn't take long for Lux to follow in the footsteps of her younger sister at all. Lux, the 14-year-old girl, ceases to exist. She's just a beautiful idea to the boys who surround her and a prize for them to covet. After all, the only reason that anyone's paying more attention to her than the rest of her sisters is because she's the one who displays the most sensual maturity. When Trip finally musters the courage to ask Lux out, he decides that it's better to visit her at their house first. Mrs. Lisbon sits in between Lux and Trip the whole night, leaving the teens no room for conversation. Lux, however, still manages to send a subtle sign of flirting to Trip, but Mrs. Lisbon still notices it. When it's finally time for Trip to go home, Lux walks him to the door and bids him goodbye. Trip leaves in disappointment, then sits in his car, but to his surprise, Lux suddenly gets in with him. The two make out in the car passionately, and when it's time for Lux to get back into the house, she leaves her chewing gum inside Trip's mouth. If you tighten the noose on someone, they'll only struggle more. With how strict and imposing her parents are, it almost feels natural for the girl to feel and act deprived of a boy's attention. But the ironic thing is, Mr. and Mrs. Lisbon may as well be the ones who planted the seed of longing in Lux's heart. The next day, Trip talks to Mr. Lisbon to tell him that his intentions for Lux are entirely honorable. Confused, Mr. Lisbon asks Trip what he meant, and the young man says he wants to take Lux to the homecoming dance. Surprised, Mr. Lisbon asks Trip to sit down, then tells him that he and his wife have certain rules for their children. And the rules that apply to the older girls can't be changed for the younger ones. Mr. Lisbon adds that his wife won't let him change the rules even if he wanted to, then invites Trip to come over to their house and watch TV instead. To clarify things, Mr. Lisbon tells Trip that he can't take Lux to the dance, especially in a car. When Trip offers to take out all of Mr. Lisbon's daughters along with his other friends and have them back home before curfew, Mr. Lisbon tells him that he'll talk to his wife about it first. Upon getting home from work, Mr. Lisbon immediately tells his wife about Trip's desire to take Lux and the other girls to the dance. The Lisbon girls get excited about it, but their mother is clearly reluctant to let them go. Trying to convince his wife, Mr. Lisbon assures her it's going to be fine since he's a chaperone for the dance, but Mrs. Lisbon wishes to discuss it more later. The girls seem to have everything they could need in their house except for autonomy. They don't get any input about the dance, and while it's expected that they're thrilled to go, nobody even asks them what they think. As always, young girls are rarely given control over their lives, and Mr. Lisbon was keener to talk things over with Trip than he was with the girls. But here, it's clear that Mr. Lisbon is more open to letting his daughters explore the world. It's Mrs. Lisbon who has her hand tight on their leash. At school the next day, Mr. Lisbon informs Trip that he and his wife have decided to let him take Lux to the homecoming dance. During football practice, Trip tells his friends he's taking Lux to the dance, adding that he needs 3 more guys to come with him to be Lux's sister's dates. The girls are ecstatic to learn that their parents are letting them attend the dance, and when they finally choose their dresses, Mrs. Lisbon makes sure that they look proper. Lux, Mary, Bonnie, and Therese wear modified dresses that almost look like sacks to conceal their figure, but that doesn't stop them from being excited to attend the dance with Trip and his friends. Mrs. Lisbon greets Trip and his friends, and when they finally arrive to pick the girls up, Trip is completely blown away by Lux's beauty. He and the boys then put the corsage they've brought to their date's dress, and once they leave, Mrs. Lisbon immediately feels the emptiness in the house. All parents are worried about their children, but Mrs. Lisbon is especially anxious and neurotic. This is what happens when you view your daughters as little more than symbols of purity who must never be tainted. Ironically, Mrs. Lisbon dehumanizes her daughters just like the very boys she's trying to protect them against. She barely sees them as their own individual persons. Mrs. Lisbon just sees them for the ways they can be corrupted. On their way to the dance, the girls are having the time of their lives. They show that they have keen minds and sharp wits, as evidenced by their different quips for their different neighbors. Lux smokes a cigarette from Trip, making her sisters feel uncomfortable. Bonnie warns her their father will smell it on her clothes, but Lux is stubborn, saying she will just tell him that some kids were smoking in the bathroom. At school, all the girls look at Lux and Trip as they arrive together. Later, the two are hailed as homecoming king and queen, and after they claim their crowns on stage, they join the students in dancing. The Lisbon sisters are happy, and they feel a semblance of freedom. Even Mr. Lisbon can see this, and he's happy for them. While everyone is busy, Trip persuades Lux to go with him for a walk, but Lux is worried that her father will notice her absence. Determined to be alone with Lux, Trip tells her to make up an excuse of going to her locker, and the girl agrees. Meanwhile, Lux's sisters and Trip's friends wait for them in the car, wondering where the two have gone. The boys then take Mary, Bonnie, and Therese home, while Trip and Lux make love in the field. When Lux wakes up the next day, she is confused to learn that Trip has left her there alone. It's hardly a mystery as to why Trip just left Lux. He got what he wanted from her, and the spell is now broken. Lux is no longer that unconquerable enigma to him. She's now just another one of the girls he slept with. With no other choice, Lux takes a cab home. While her father asks her how she is, her mother roughly demands to know where she's been. As a grown-up, Trip recalls how he left Lux sleeping on the field after they make love. He remembers how he didn't care if Lux got home safely, which he finds weird since he really liked her. Trip feels lucky that he was able to experience a special kind of love with Lux. Again, this only reinforces how Lux is just more attractive as an idea and as a symbol of desire. Trip really isn't interested in her as a person. All he cares about is the thought of being with her and romanticizing whatever they had. After all, how can he fall in love with a girl he hardly spoke to and left after banging? Because of Lux's mistake, Mrs. Lisbon takes all her daughters out of school and puts them in complete isolation. As if that isn't enough, Mrs. Lisbon orders Lux to destroy her rock record collection. No matter how much Lux begs her mother to let her keep them, Mrs. Lisbon is set on teaching her daughter a lesson. Sobbing, Lux is forced to burn her vinyl records as her mother watches. When she couldn't take the burning smell anymore, Mrs. Lisbon throws them in the trash instead. Aside from Mrs. Lisbon's extreme measure of isolating her daughters from the world, she went on her little crusade to strip Lux of her identity, of her hobby that has nothing to do with her femininity by forcing her to burn her prized rock records. Her sisters don't even have anything to do with Lux's mistake, yet she punished them all the same. No matter Mrs. Lisbon's intentions, it's safe to assume that she has no respect for her daughters' personal lives. Out of rebellion, Lux starts the habit of hooking up with different boys and men on their roof. Unknown to her, she is being watched by most of the boys in their neighborhood, who love to gossip about her and pick her apart once she's done with her little escapades. Mr. Lisbon, who's been absent-minded the entire time, is eventually replaced as a math teacher, giving their neighbors more things to talk about. One day, when a tree-cutting company shows up at the Lisbons' lawn to cut down their elm tree, the four sisters decide that they won't allow it since Cecilia loved that tree. As one of the workers insists that the tree is dead, Lux, Mary, Bonnie, and Therese hold hands and surround the tree, saying that they should just leave it up to nature. Frustrated, the worker talks to Mr. and Mrs. Lisbon and explains to them that if they don't cut down their sick elm tree, then the other trees in the neighborhood will start dying, too. He even threatens to call the cops if the girls don't move, but the couple insists that the girls are simply standing on their own front lawn. As they argue, the local media shows up to report on what's happening. Lydia's back to exploit the situation for TV again, and she rushes her crew to get footage of the girls in their 90s. She sensationalizes the situation, painting the girls as the tragic salvagers of their late sister's loving memory. In the end, the elm tree is finally cut down. This just goes to show that the objectification, commodification, romanticization, and all that fun ends never end for these girls. The boys spend so much of their free time making a feist out of Lux's promiscuity. The neighbors treat the family as nothing more than lunchtime gossip. The media doesn't hesitate to make a story out of the sisters without even talking to them. Everyone has a voice in the sisters' lives but the sisters themselves. The sad thing is, the girls have it in them to stand up to a cutting company to protect a dying tree, but no one ever stepped in to help them. As time passes by, the Lisbon sisters remain in isolation. The neighborhood boys barely see the sisters, and the girls never talk to their homecoming dates again. The girls then start ordering brochures for exotic vacations so that they could travel even if just in their imaginations. To feel closer to them, Tim and his friends order the same brochures, too, visualizing that they're with the Lisbon sisters as they go to different places. To cope with their sadness, the girls begin to send out notes to the boys, asking them for help. When Tim and his friends finally decide to contact the girls through the phone, he gives them his number before quickly ending the call. The Lisbon sisters are quick to call the boys back, but instead of talking to each other, they would just play some music for all of them to listen to. The brochure reading, the music playing over the telephone, these are the only things the girls could do to stay sane in their maddening and heartbreaking situation. But to the boys, these little activities are just a small part of their day. They're just trivial things to do so they can pretend that they're closer to the girls. And at the end of the day, they can go around doing whatever they please because they're free to live life the way they want. One night, the sisters talk to their mother and tell her how they feel, saying that they're suffocating. Unmoved, Mrs. Lisbon insists they're safe there. The next day, the sisters send out another letter to Tim, asking him to meet them once he and his friends see the sisters signal. As Tim and the other boys wait from a house across the street, the Lisbon sisters finally signal them to come over to their place. Clearly, the girls are planning to do something in retaliation for their mother's refusal to hear them out. If only Mrs. Lisbon listened to her daughters, they'd be able to resolve their problem in a better way. Unfortunately, Mrs. Lisbon has no idea that her stubbornness is about to lead to a tragedy that she and her husband will have to live with forever. Excited, the boys sneak out to the Lisbon residence, where they find Lux smoking in the living room. Lux opens the door for them, and Tim informs her that they have a car and they can go wherever they want to. Worried that they might get caught, Tim asks Lux where her parents are, and Lux assures him they're asleep. Chase then tells her that they need to go since it's getting late, but Lux wants to wait for a few more minutes until they're sure her parents won't be coming down. Lux suggests they use their family car since it's bigger, and when Lux finally lets them in, she tells the boys to wait for her sisters in the living room while she waits for them in the car. Inside the house, the boys hear a sound from the basement, so they decide to check it out. There, they are horrified to see one of the sisters hanging from the ceiling, so they immediately run back upstairs and stumble upon another sister's body on the floor. The boys leave the house in a haste, never looking back again. The sisters' bodies are taken away the next day, and the boys believe that Bonnie hanged herself while they were waiting in the living room. Meanwhile, Mary put her head in the oven while Therese overdosed on sleeping pills. The last of the sisters, Lux, has taken her life by carbon monoxide poisoning. The methods the girls used to kill themselves largely had to do with asphyxiation. This may have been their way of showing their parents and the boys how they were suffocating, how the confined world that gave them no autonomy was stifling to them. But in the end, this is just speculation. No one will ever know the why. All that the world can be sure of is that the girls were tragic, and the Lisbon couple failed to protect their daughters. Different media outlets cover the sad story of the Lisbon sisters. As Mr. and Mrs. Lisbon skip town to avoid all the gossip about them, Mrs. Lisbon insists that none of her daughters lacked any love. While the Lisbons have someone to sell their house and furniture, Tim and his friends take some of the Lisbon family photos that were thrown out, along with the other belongings of the girls. They want to figure out where things started going wrong for the family, but no matter how hard they try, gaps remained, and more questions are formed. As the adults go back to their lives, pretending as if nothing horrible has happened in their neighborhood, Tim and his friends attempt to forget the Lisbon sisters. However, they remain haunted by their memories. After 25 years, Tim and his friends, who are now middle-aged men, ruminate about how they never found an answer. But to them, it never really mattered how old the sisters had been or that they were girls. What mattered was that they loved the Lisbons and that they hadn't heard the boys calling out to them. Though The Virgin Suicides is supposed to tell the story of these 5 girls, the story is told by boys who never understood them, boys who never truly tried to understand them, and boys who kept trying to make the story about themselves. Even the very title of the film reduces these sisters to their own novelties, as if their chastity and their self-appointed deaths are what define them. The boys keep trying to piece their puzzle together, but they never once stop to look at these girls as human beings. They never even question why Mrs. Lisbon was the way she was and why Mr. Lisbon was powerless to stop his wife from confining his daughters. It's as if the boys accepted the situation with a sense of normalcy, or maybe they never truly cared about the girls themselves like they deluded themselves into thinking. After all, there's a reason why they had the most to say about Lux. She was the most promiscuous of the sisters. She was the easiest to objectify, to fixate over, and to thirst over. The boys, now men, even said it themselves, who the Lisbons were never mattered. What mattered was that they were the object of their desires. From the beginning up until the very end, Cecilia, Lux, Bonnie, Mary, and Therese were all dehumanized for no reason beyond their girlhood. Their mother dismissed their autonomy and their individual selves and instead saw them as vessels of innocence who must never be corrupted, and the boys saw them as something divine and otherworldly. From Cecilia's diary, the boys concluded that girls were profound and mystical creatures even though her diary entries were mundane. They filled in the gaps themselves to keep their romanticized views of the girls' beings. Going back to Lux, why did Tripp leave her vulnerable and alone on the football field? Likely, it was because he cracked at the angelic mystique of Lux Lisbon, and when she slept with him, he caught a glimpse of what she was, a human, just human. And because the boys kept ignoring just what the girls were, they became deaf to their cries. It wasn't the girls who didn't hear the boys calling out to them. It was the boys, the parents, the neighbors, it was everyone who failed to hear the girls calling out to them. Just another day in the life of a girl. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.